Hey y'all, what's cooking? Happy New Year! One Piece Season 1, after 28 years, has finally come to an end, sitting at 1,155 episodes. This makes it one of the longest anime seasons ever. So, as a One Piece fan, I'd like to share my thoughts about this whole situation. So, usually, right, the One Piece anime has more episodes in a year than series author Eiichiro Oda puts out in a year in Weekly Shonen Jump. So the production studio behind the One Piece anime, Toei Animation, had to make sure that they put out these episodes while making sure not to catch up to the manga, which is the source material of most anime, so that they don't run out of material and have to implement a ridiculous amount of filler. Naruto and Bleach. So what has Toei Animation done? Because there's hardly about 10% of filler in the One Piece anime. They took a different route. Instead of adding an absolutely crazy amount of filler, what they've done is that they've slowed the pacing of each canon episode to an absolute crawl. Starting from around the Enies Lobby arc, the pacing of the One Piece anime slowed down to exactly one chapter per episode adapted. And this kept up for a while, until the arc of Dressrosa. Now, the arc of Dressrosa is infamous for being an extremely long arc in the anime. Now, when Oda was writing this arc, he was actually hospitalized for health conditions. And that's why even in the manga, the Dressrosa arc has pretty questionable pacing. So the fact that the anime too had to slow down their pacing for this arc means that each episode, on average, adapted less than a chapter per episode. The manga had 100 chapters exactly for this arc. The anime had 118 episodes. That is just painful. And this kind of pacing has been carrying on from Dressrosa through Zou, through Whole Cake, through Wano, through Egghead, and not through Elbaf. Let's get to that. So, in 2024, 2 years ago now, wow, that was 2 years ago. The One Piece anime took its first hiatus in 26 years. They took a 6-month hiatus between October of 2024 to April of 2025. This marked a turning point in the way that Toei handled weekly One Piece. So, what this break allowed for is, right, it allowed Oda to pull ahead from the anime, allowing him to have a bit of a buffer so that the anime could hasten up their pacing a little bit more, up from the crawl that it was up until halfway through Egghead at that point. And it allowed them to really focus on the quality of the animation of the second half of the Egghead Island arc. And it really does show with episodes like 1143, 1144. Those were beautifully animated. So, with Oda's declining health and with him taking much longer breaks in the manga, these years he releases around 30 chapters a year, with 2025 seeing 34 One Piece chapters, from chapter 1135 at the beginning to 1169 at the end. So, how does One Piece benefit from becoming a season anime after all these years? I mean, after all, for the last 3 decades, it's managed in weekly, right? Well, let's dive into that. So, switching to a seasonal form of animation, like most current gen, new gen, and slightly oldish gen anime, is A. It lets the manga pull ahead, allowing Oda and Toei to have a kind of story buffer so that they don't clash with each other too much. B. It allows them to fix the pacing of the One Piece anime. Since the second half of Egghead, the One Piece anime has been coasting at one chapter per episode. This was possible because of the 6-month hiatus they took. So rather than having to keep up with 0.7, 0.8 chapters per episode, we can go with what worked for almost a decade, with one chapter per episode, which can reduce the amount of tiny filler in the episodes and extremely long, drawn-out sequences in the anime. And C. It gives Toei time to again focus on the quality of animation, sound design, and Toei Animation has expressed a desire to keep changing the art style for each arc in this final saga of One Piece. We saw this when they changed the art style for the Egghead arc, and looking from the trailer that they released for the Elbaf arc, they are going to be changing the animation style for that too. Cannot wait for that. Of course, as most One Piece fans, I am a bit upset that there will be a bit less quantity of One Piece to go around in 2026 and beyond. But it is important that the quality of the One Piece that we do get is top notch. It also puts a lot less pressure on poor Oda to keep pumping out chapters week after week after week and gives him more breathing room, knowing that the anime isn't hot on his heels. Spoilers for the Elbaf arc. So, looking ahead, right, to after the 26 episodes that will air next year have aired, I think it will end around Emu possessing Gunko, because that is a major turning point in the Battle of Elbaf. Whether it is a final battle or not, we're still yet to see. This puts the anime in a pretty interesting spot, because it ends just before the Harold, Loki, Shaki, Rocks, God Valley, Shanks flashback. This actually puts it in a pretty good place for maybe, I don't know, a God Valley movie. That, I would definitely go to that. Me, with the success of Infinity Castle and Chainsaw Man, I think it might be a no brainer for Toei to make a God Valley movie. So, could we see a God Valley movie in 2027? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see to that. But after all is said and done, I do think that this is a turn in the right direction for One Piece. I think this will benefit the viewers, Oda, Toei, and pretty much all parties involved. Yeah, so these are my thoughts on One Piece going seasonal. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.